My wife cheated with our neighbor, and now she's claiming I owe her $250, $0 in our divorce settlement. She secretly transferred our family home to her sister, and I just found out I might lose everything. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My life took a turn I never saw coming, and honestly, it all started with a gut feeling that something was wrong. You know that feeling when everything seems fine on the surface, but deep down you just know something off. Yeah, that's how it started. My wife Jessica and I had been married for about 7 years. We had the usual ups and downs, but overall I thought we were solid. She was beautiful, successful, and seemed to have her act together, at least on the outside. But then little things began to change. She started working late more often, saying it was just her job, but I noticed she was more secretive with her phone, hiding her texts and calls. She'd get defensive if I asked about who she was talking to, claiming I was paranoid or insecure. She'd brush it off with a sharp attitude, calling me clingy or jealous. That's when I started feeling uneasy. I mean, I wasn't the perfect husband. I admit I wasn't always attentive enough, but I never suspected she'd cheat on me. Not until I found that text message. It happened when I was cleaning out my inbox, trying to clear some space on my phone. I stumbled across a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was brief, but the words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you. That's when I froze. I looked at the date 2 nights ago. Jessica had told me she was at her sister for a weekend girls trip. But that message, it said otherwise. I checked her phone history and there were dozens of texts, calls, and even explicit photos exchanged with this guy named Mike, our neighbor. I couldn't believe it. Mike, the guy who lives 2 houses down, the one who always waves and seems like a decent enough guy. Turns out, he's been sleeping with my wife for months. I found out she'd been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, pretending everything was fine. And the worst part, she had the nerve to lie when I confronted her. I called her out that night, my voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. I told her I knew everything. She looked me straight in the eyes, smirked, and said I was overreacting, that I was imagining things, that Mike was just a friend she'd been talking to because she was lonely. She told me she was sorry, but she didn't mean to hurt me, that it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but I couldn't. It was like my world was crumbling. The trust I thought we had was shattered in an instant. I felt angry, betrayed, humiliated. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she throw away everything we built over some guy? I was furious, but underneath that was a deep sadness I couldn't shake. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see that she was capable of this. And then she started spinning her lies even more. She claimed she was confused, that she didn't love Mike, that it was just sex, and that she was sorry she hurt me, but she needed space to figure herself out. That's when I realized her words were just tools to manipulate me, to keep me from realizing the full extent of what she'd done. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I loved her, I genuinely did, but I also hated her for what she'd become. I started questioning everything, our marriage, her feelings, my own judgment. I didn't sleep that night, just sat there staring at the ceiling, trying to process the betrayal. I knew I couldn't just brush this off. I had to decide what to do next. Do I forgive her? Do I fight for the marriage? Or do I walk away and rebuild my life from scratch? The pain was overwhelming, and the betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion and anger. I didn't want to lose everything, but I also couldn't imagine staying with someone who had lied and cheated so blatantly. That's where I am right now, standing at a crossroads, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of a shattered life and what my next move should be. After that night, everything felt like a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, hell, I couldn't think straight. My mind kept circling back to what I'd discovered, replaying every moment, every sign I'd ignored. I kept asking myself how I missed all the red flags, how I didn't see that Jessica had been lying right in front of me. I used to think she was the most honest person I knew, but now I see she was just masterful at hiding her true self. I started digging into her phone and emails the next morning. I needed proof, something concrete to confirm what I already knew deep down. I found more than I bargained for. There were dozens of messages, some explicit, some just flirtatious, all betraying her words that she was confused or just friends. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring money, large sums, out of our joint account. I never paid much attention to our finances, but now I realized she was planning her escape, maybe even planning to leave me with nothing. That's when I found the biggest shocker. Hidden in her email drafts was a transfer request, transferring our family home, our biggest asset, to her sister, Lisa. It was all done in secret, no mention of it to me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Our home, our family's safe place, was no longer ours. She signed it over to her sister, probably to make sure she'd have a fallback, or maybe just to stick it to me. I couldn't believe she'd go so far, betray me like that, and then lie about everything. I confronted her that afternoon. I told her I knew about the transfer, about the money, everything. She just smirked again, acting innocent, claiming I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. She said she was trying to protect herself, that she'd never cheat if she didn't have to, but I saw right through her. She was lying, just like always. She told me she was doing what she had to do, that I owed her $250, $0 in our divorce settlement because I'd failed to support her emotionally, and that I was the one who was responsible for everything falling apart. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was twisting everything to make herself look like the victim, like I was the bad guy. Meanwhile, she was secretly planning her escape, transferring assets, and probably already living with Mike. I started to feel a mixture of rage and helplessness. How could she be so cold, so calculating? How could she turn our marriage into some kind of game? I felt like I'd been played, like I was the fool all along. That night, I sat alone in the dark, trying to gather my thoughts. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. The house was still in her name, her sister had the deed, and I was pretty sure I was about to lose everything. Our home, our savings, maybe even my future. I felt betrayed, not just by her actions, but by her entire personality. Jessica had always been a bit bitchy, yes, but I thought that was just her being a tough, independent woman. Now I see she's just manipulative and selfish, willing to lie and cheat her way out of everything. I kept thinking about the money, about the house, about her claim that I owed her $500,000 in our divorce settlement. Where the hell did she get that number? I knew we didn't have that kind of money, and I suspected she was trying to scare me into giving her what she wanted. That's when I made up my mind I had to fight back. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, especially not after everything she'd done. I started researching lawyers, divorce laws, and how to challenge the transfer of property. I needed a plan, a way to turn this chaos into some kind of justice. I realized that this wasn't just about her cheating on me. It was about her trying to steal my life. And I was damn sure I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to protect what was mine, my house, my money, my dignity. It was clear she'd been planning this for a while, and I was just now waking up to the reality. The betrayal cut deep, but I knew I had to be strong. I couldn't let her win, not like this, not without a fight. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into action, trying to piece together what I could and figure out my next steps. I contacted a lawyer I found on a recommendation, someone who specialized in family law and asset disputes. I needed to understand my rights, especially with her transferring the house to her sister without my knowledge. The lawyer was blunt and to the point. He told me that, legally, transferring property without my consent could be challenged, especially since the house was in joint ownership, or at least was supposed to be. But the tricky part was the transfer to her sister. That was a covert move, and I'd need evidence to prove she was trying to hide assets or commit fraud. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I hired a private investigator to look into her recent activities. I wanted to know if she was already living with Mike, if she'd been planning this for months, or if she had any other surprises hidden away. The investigator uncovered some shocking stuff. Jessica had been meeting with Mike late at night, sometimes in her sister Lisa's house, other times at hotels nearby. It wasn't just a fling. It seemed like she was planning her escape, possibly even preparing to leave the country if she could. I also found out that she'd been secretly withdrawing large sums of money from our joint account, more than I ever knew. She'd drained it over the last few months, probably to fund her new life. The worst part was realizing I was completely. For years, I'd trusted her, and now I saw how little that trust was worth. She lied to my face, betrayed me, and tried to wipe out my financial future. One of the most shocking moments came when I discovered she'd been talking to a lawyer about divorce proceedings even before I found out about her affair. It was like she'd already made up her mind. She had a plan, and I was just the last to know. She was trying to make me look like the bad guy, claiming I didn't support her emotionally, that I was controlling, and that I owed her money. All lies. I knew I had to fight her on this. The emotional toll was brutal. I went from feeling disbelief to anger, then sadness. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, and now I was faced with the reality that she'd been cheating, lying, and planning her escape for months. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. Every time I looked at the house, I felt a mix of heartbreak and rage. That was supposed to be our home, the place we built our life. Now it felt like a prison, a symbol of everything I'd lost. I started to think about what I wanted moving forward. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after the lies and betrayal. I also couldn't let her take everything I'd worked for. I decided to push back hard. I filed a legal challenge to the property transfer, claiming she was acting in bad faith and trying to defraud me of our assets. I also began gathering evidence of her affair, her secret withdrawals, and her conversations with her lawyer. Every piece of proof was another blow to her case. Honestly, it was terrifying. I'd never been in a situation like this before. I felt vulnerable, exposed, and furious. Jessica had always been the bitchy, sharp-tongued wife, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, dishonest woman willing to destroy everything we had for her own gain. I knew I had to stay strong, for myself, and for whatever was left of my dignity. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was determined to protect what little I still had and to hold her accountable for her actions. There's a strange clarity that comes with hitting rock bottom. I realized I'd been so caught up in trying to keep peace and make her happy that I'd missed all the warning signs. Now, I was learning the hard way that sometimes you have to stand up and fight for yourself, even if it means tearing everything apart first. I didn't know what the final outcome would be, but I was prepared to go to war for what was rightfully mine. And the truth was, I didn't just want the house or the money. I wanted her to face the consequences of what she'd done. That's where I am now, waiting, strategizing, trying to stay afloat in this storm of betrayal. The legal battle was I hired a lawyer who specialized in property disputes and divorce fraud, and from the first meeting, I knew I was in for a fight. She tried to spin her narrative, claiming she transferred the house because she was scared of losing everything. But I had the evidence, screenshots of her emails, bank statements showing withdrawals, and the investigators' reports. My lawyer warned me that her transferring the house to her sister was a major red flag, especially since it was done secretly and without my consent. We filed a motion to freeze the property transfer and to subpoena her bank records. Jessica's reaction was typical: denial, blame shifting, and outright lies. She insisted she was the victim, that I'd been controlling, emotionally abusive even, and that I owed her $250, $0 because I failed to support her emotionally. She threw out that figure like it was gospel, trying to make me look like the villain. But I knew better. I'd been blinded for years, but now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd been planning her escape long before I found out. What made everything worse was her attitude during these confrontations. She was bitchy, dismissive, and condescending. She'd roll her eyes and call me paranoid, jealous, or crazy. She accused me of trying to control her, even though I was just trying to get answers. The more I pushed, the more she played the victim, claiming I was harassing her and that I was ruining her life. Meanwhile, she was secretly meeting with her lawyer, planning her next move, and trying to hide her assets. One night, I caught her in a lie that really pushed me over the edge. She told me she had no idea where the money had gone, that she'd never withdrawn anything large from our account, But then I found a bank statement showing she'd taken out $50, $0 just a week before she claimed she was trying to be honest. That was the moment I realized she was lying about everything. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was losing my mind. I also discovered that she'd had multiple secret meetings with her sister Lisa, who was now the legal owner of our house. Lisa was complicit. She knew what Jessica was doing and was helping her hide assets. It was like a web of lies and deception, and I was caught right in the middle of it. I felt so powerless, knowing she was orchestrating everything behind my back. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. My emotions swung wildly: anger, frustration, sadness, and sometimes even guilt. I kept wondering if I'd been a bad husband, if I'd failed her somehow. But deep down, I knew the truth. She'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and tried to steal my future. The house, the money, everything we'd built. She was trying to take it all away. I couldn't let that happen. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant tearing her entire world apart. The more I dug, the more I realized how far she was willing to go. She'd cut corners, manipulate the system, and lie to everyone, including her own family, to get what she wanted. I started to see her as a different person entirely. The Jessica I married was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. It was a brutal wake-up call. I had trusted her, loved her, and now I had to accept that she'd been using me all along. This was no longer just about infidelity. It was about her trying to wipe out my life and start anew. I knew I had to stay strong, keep fighting, and expose her for what she truly was. I was angry, yes, but also determined. I couldn't let her get away with stealing my home, my money, and my dignity. The coming weeks would be critical, and I had to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. I wasn't going down without a fight. She'd pushed me to the edge, and now I was ready to push back hard. The legal process dragged on, and every day felt like a new battle. Jessica was throwing everything she had: more lies, more manipulations, even trying to turn friends and family against me. She told her sister Lisa to lie about the transfer, claiming she had no idea it was happening, even though I had the proof that she signed the documents herself. It was obvious she was desperate to keep her plans hidden, but I wasn't backing down. I had the evidence, and I was prepared to fight to the bitter end. One of the most shocking moments came when her lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, claiming I was harassing Jessica and that I had no right to question her actions. That was laughable. I realized then how far she was willing to go to gaslight me. She wanted to make me look like the crazy one, the controlling husband who couldn't accept her leaving. But I knew the truth. I knew she was lying, cheating, and trying to steal everything I had. I also started to uncover that she'd secretly been working with a divorce lawyer for months, preparing her case to claim she deserved half of everything, despite the fact that she'd been sneaking around, lying, and transferring assets behind my back. She even hired her own investigator, probably to gather dirt on me or to find ways to justify her actions. It was clear she was determined to come out of this with a win, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my head together. I felt betrayed and humiliated, sure, but I also knew I had to stay focused. I started documenting everything: every call, every meeting, every lie she told. I kept a detailed journal of the events, knowing that this evidence would be crucial if it went to court. My lawyer advised me that challenging the property transfer was the right move, but it wouldn't be easy. Jessica had a lot of resources, and she was using them to try and outmaneuver me. One of the worst moments was when I found out she'd secretly transferred money into a Swiss bank account, money she'd hidden from me for months. I felt sick. All those years I'd trusted her, and now I saw how she'd been planning to disappear with everything. It was a punch to the gut. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all these signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but I never thought she'd be this calculating and cold. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to be strategic. The lawyer told me that her secret transfer of the house to her sister could be reversed if I could prove it was done in bad faith. That became my main focus. I contacted forensic accountants and investigators to dig deeper into her financials. I also started to prepare for the possibility of a messy court battle, knowing that Jessica would do everything she could to win at any cost. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt a mixture of rage and despair, anger at her, betrayal, despair over losing our home, and frustration at how she'd manipulated everyone around her. But beneath it all, I also felt a growing resolve. I was not going to let her destroy my life without a fight. Every lie she told, every sneaky move she made, only fueled my determination. Looking back, I realize how much I'd underestimated her. I thought I knew Jessica, but now I see she was capable of anything: lying, cheating, stealing. And I know I can't just sit back and let her walk away with everything. I've got to keep pushing, keep fighting, and hold her accountable. This isn't just about a house or some money anymore. It's about standing up for myself and not letting her win. I'm exhausted, but I also know I've come too far to give up now. I have to see this through to the end, no matter how ugly it gets. By the time I finally got to the court hearing, I felt like I'd already been through hell and back. Jessica was there, looking smug, trying to act like she was the innocent victim in all of this. Her lawyer was doing his best to spin her story, claiming she was just trying to protect herself and that I was harassing her. But I had all the proof: screenshots, bank statements, witness statements from the investigator, and I knew I had the upper hand. Still, the weight of it all pressed down on me. I'd never felt so drained and furious at the same time. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the evidence. We argued that Jessica's transfer of the house to her sister was done in bad faith, that it was an attempt to hide assets and defraud me of my rightful share. I about discovering her affair, the secret withdrawals, and the lies she'd told about her intentions. I told the court how she'd manipulated everyone: her family, her friends, even her own lawyer, to cover her tracks. It was raw, honest, and I could see the judge taking it all in. Jessica tried to deny everything, but her words sounded hollow against the mountain of evidence. Her lawyer kept trying to suggest that I was overreacting, that I'd been controlling, that she was just trying to protect her future. But the judge wasn't buying it. After hours of arguments, the judge ruled in my favor. The transfer of the house was declared invalid because it was done without full disclosure and in bad faith. The court ordered Jessica to return the property to the estate, and she was ordered to pay back the money she'd withdrawn and transferred illegally. The aftermath was Jessica's face twisted in rage and disbelief as the judge's decision sank in. She tried to appeal, but I knew I'd won a crucial battle. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard for what was rightfully mine, but the betrayal still haunted me. I realized that I'd lost a lot: trust, stability, and the woman I loved. The house was returned to the estate, and I was awarded a fair settlement, but it didn't erase the pain. In the end, I decided to move on. I sold the house, split what was left of our assets, and started rebuilding my life. Jessica moved out, and I cut all contact. I learned that sometimes people you trust the most can turn out to be the biggest liars and manipulators. The experience left me jaded, but also stronger. I've come to see that my worth isn't tied to her lies or the house she tried to steal. I've learned to trust my instincts, to listen to that little voice warning me when something's wrong, and to never ignore the signs again. Looking back, I realize how much I grew through this ordeal. It's taught me that betrayal can come from unexpected places, and that the fight for justice is often messy and painful. But I also learned that standing up for myself is the only way to reclaim my life. No matter how hard things get, I know now I have the strength to face whatever comes next. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar remembers: don't let someone else's lies define you. Fight for what's yours and never underestimate your own resilience.